And now, the Lowdown, with economist and political strategist Elson Low.
Good evening, folks. Good evening. It's a Saturday night again. I'm your host, Elson Low, with the Lowdown. Thank you for coming and joining us here this evening. Thank you for joining us. If you could share the link, we really appreciate that. Share the link, folks. Let's try and get as many people as possible watching this show, having a good time with us here on Saturday night. We like to keep it light. We like to have some fun. We like to relax a bit on Saturday night with the Lowdown. We're going to have yet an interesting show for you guys tonight. We're going to run through what we call the game of the week. We're also going to talk a bit about some of the development failures, project failures that have been highlighted recently by former Auditor General. So that should be interesting. Of course, we always want to go over these things in an entertaining way. And we're going to have Shanita Haynes, who is a press official for the PNCR, and she actually hosts a show herself. So we're going to have a quick chat with her. And we're going to close off with some advice to young people and to guys more generally about the oil and gas industry. And we always want to talk about how you position yourself as a young person to benefit from this up and coming industry. The last time we spoke at great length about the amount of jobs that might be created. So now we're going to talk a little bit about where those jobs exactly will be situated, so you get a picture in your mind of how this industry will unfold. So folks, please share the link. Let's try and get as many people as possible watching. We're here to have a laugh. We're here to talk about interesting topics. We're here to learn a bit, and hopefully by the end of it, you'll have taken away some interesting insights, and you'll have kicked your Saturday night off on a high. We always say start your Saturday on a high with Elson Low and the Lowdown. So share the link, folks. Share the link. Let's try and get as wide coverage as possible. And we'll discuss some interesting issues today. And actually, it's leans a bit on some of the things that I studied in college at Amherst College, which is what I attended. It leans a bit from that. So that's not just the cost of the project that is lost, but the potential gains or the gains that could have been accrued to the country could have gotten if the money was otherwise invested. And so that is something that we don't really think about. We're talking a bit about that tonight. Not just the loss of a project, but the loss of those funds if they had been invested somewhere else. In economics, we call that the opportunity cost. What's the cost of us investing in this and failing versus us investing in something that succeeded and us getting major economic benefit from that. So we're going to go over that with regards to the large national development project it is that we've seen over the course of the past little bit in Guyana, and that should give you some perspective as to why we face development challenges now, and talk a bit about future projects that are creating other development challenges. So in the course of doing all of these of this kind of analysis, I hope to give you a real opportunity to come to raise the standard of analysis, the standard that we hold government policymakers to when it comes to big policies that don't work out. If a policy doesn't handle, we'll cover two things. So I think there's a $200 million US loss that you're looking at. If you don't see progress and 200 million US is wasted or not spent the way it should be spent, what's the real cost? It's 200 million US, of course, is the initial cost. But there's an additional cost. That's the cost of the benefit that we could have gotten if we had invested as well. So we'll talk about that. We'll give you a sense of that, and hopefully, when you look at these government projects in the future, you'll be asking yourself what else could have happened and how the country might otherwise have benefited. So, folks, share the link. We're going to get into our first section now. We're going to start talking about the name of the week. So let's get our first slide up there, and we'll have a laugh. Okay, so we're back at something that we covered extensively last time, which is the monument at the roundabout. And here someone has compiled some facts about the particular monument. Obviously, some people have expressed interest, or perhaps a better word is confusion regarding the monument. First of all, it's perhaps not looking like a harpy eagle, which is what it's intended to represent. But one of the things that was said about this is that this is a monument that is a full-size replica. So it's supposed to be, a replica of the harpy eagle. However, it is 11 feet in length and has a wingspan of 17 feet. And I don't know about you folks, but I don't know any harpies that are 11 feet in length. So I'm not sure how that was portrayed, but if you take a look at this bird, it has caused some consternation. I have indicated that I thought it was a toucan originally, but then I said those colors are off. Some people said it was a crow. Some people said they thought maybe it was maybe a jumpy bird. I don't know if they mean from an artistic perspective, trying to portray what a jumpy as a bird would look like. But that's essentially some of the commentary we've gotten about this monument so far. Let's go on to the next picture. Keep this discussion going on. Okay, so there you have a commentator who is indicating that it would be better if they had a big picture of a big bird, if they had a big monument, big bird there, that would actually be much better than the existing bird. If you want to put a bird, may as well you put a big bird there. So clearly that person is not too pleased with the monument. Let's get the next slide up there. And then someone has actually gone in closely, looked more closely at the feet of the monument itself. So just taking a step closer to the monument, we got a sense of it. And those are some quite beautiful claws right there. This is something that has, of course, caused concern amongst many people, caused a great deal of humor, I think, across the country. But also because it was indicated in the government's statements regarding this monument that the claws of this bird will pick up the Guyanese economy and take it to new heights. It's a bird taking flight. So obviously, if those are the claws that are picking up the economy, we're in a little bit of trouble. So those are some of the things that we're seeing about this monument. I am optimistic that there will be an improvement and adjustment so that people maybe feel a bit more comfortable with the monument. Of course, opinions may vary regarding it. And of course, we actually heard the president come out in defense of the monument. So he's indicated that he's perfectly satisfied with the monument. You can make of that what you will, and I find that to be an interesting statement. And it makes me wonder what other projects that citizens have expressed concern about he might find to be acceptable. So I'm curious. Maybe he'll clarify in his comments, and we'll get a better perspective as to what he really means when he says that. So that's the monument itself. Some of the hilarity around the monument itself. Let's get the next shot up there. So we've then got same roundabout. So we mentioned that some of the arrows on this roundabout raise a few questions. And so in the right-hand side there, off to one side, you'll see an arrow that's circled that seems to be pointing, indicating the driver should drive directly into the wall. So this is again concerning, raises a few questions about this particular roundabout. Maybe an adjustment needs to be made. We'll see. And of course, this is not the first time in the past few months that we've seen road signs put up that were confusing. The same road had an upside down yield sign. I don't know if they've corrected that already. And on Cherry Street, I believe there was also a similar arrow pointing, indicating that drivers should drive perhaps directly into a wall. So we'll see if any adjustments are made. It's interesting that in these projects, we're seeing these sorts of small errors or these sorts of small confusions. I would imagine that the yield sign that they had put in there was intended to be right side up, but I could be wrong, viewers. I could be wrong. So we'll see if adjustments are made to this particular project. I'm also hearing that the road is not as smooth as some citizens would like it to be, which is very unfortunate. So we'll see. Maybe this is just the beginning stages of the road. Let's give the government the benefit of the doubt, and we'll see whether any changes are made. But citizens are already expressing a bit of concern, and let's see. You have to be optimistic that there will be changes done. Projects will be improved. Don't you? You have to be optimistic about these things. So let's see if anything will happen. Okay, folks. So that's the means of the week as it were. Those are the various things that citizens brought up over the course of the week that proved to be very entertaining, And as a result, we can now kind of head across to our next section. We talk a bit more about the actual things that are affecting the economy. We talk a bit more about the oil and gas and development, and we lend some perspective. Now, as I mentioned earlier, it's really important when it comes to government projects. It's really important that you look not just at the cost of the project itself, but you look at the cost of not executing the project well, that you look at the cost of what we missed out on, of the benefits that we missed out on. And you can actually measure to a certain extent those benefits. So as you kind of lead into it, if, as an example, we hadn't invested in Skeldon, but instead invested in some roads that were in a productive part of the country, you might have seen a substantial difference, substantially more growth. And I'll give you an actual estimate as to the change in growth that the country would have seen. But first, I want to step back and give you some perspective as to why these things are so important, why the scale of this issue is such a big thing, and that is because it's actually been studied. The development of various countries has actually been studied, and governments have been studied as one area. When it comes to accountability, when it comes to where funds have been spent, that's something that is being studied, and it's been indicated that is the primary reason, one of the primary, if not the most important reason, and you see some countries develop and others not. This has historically really been seen in the divide between the North and the South, or the global South, as it's mentioned, or it's also mentioned as being the third world versus the first world, so developing countries versus developed countries. And there's been considerable debates about why it is that certain countries have not been able to develop at the same pace. There's been all sorts of arguments put forward, interesting and unusual ones, but some that are a bit problematic. Often they're couched in terms of race and things like that being a factor, and religion being a factor, and all sorts of interesting but problematic arguments. Very problematic arguments. But economists have actually looked at a lot of these things and come to a better sense of what might be causing the issue. And it is, I think, in a way, very surprising. So it's a paper that I've cited before, it's the Colonial Origins of Comparative Development, MIT paper, I believe. But essentially, what those economists discuss is the influence of malaria, which is a strange thing to think about in the same breath as this. But the idea being that where colonizers encountered lots of malaria and therefore lots of death, of course, malaria is one of the most significant diseases, they didn't establish institutions, governance, that was intended to last for a long period of time, but rather merely to extract resources. And where they didn't encounter malaria and those sorts of things, they established more stable institutions, more stable governance, and as a result, they kind of set the platform for those types of countries to grow and expand. Now, examples of this are, of course, the United States and Canada, but also Australia and New Zealand. So, the entire world, really, you're seeing similar effects. On the other hand, when you look at countries like Guyana, Latin America, countries in Africa, Southern Asia, you get a sense that they've not been able to develop as much. And those are all countries where there was a high rate of malaria, where settlers would have died in great numbers. So this has been studied that way. And the results of the paper are that pretty much all of the difference in development between the northern developed countries and the global south is due to this difference. And so the most important factor to consider is governance. But that sounds very abstract. It sounds like something that's difficult to even understand or measure or get a sense of. And so we'll try to make it concrete and we'll boil everything right back down to the skeleton and even to future projects. So you'll have a good sense of the specific reasons this is so important. But I think maybe the way to start to approach this topic or to give you a sense of it is to talk about our next door neighbor and talk about Latin America more generally, which is, of course, was also ruled by colonial powers. Latin America, Venezuela, a lot of these countries that were ruled by various colonial powers. Well resourced, just the same as Guyana is well resourced, so all of that is available to them. However, what maybe sometimes slides under the radar is that whereas countries like Guyana and many countries across the British colonial world received their independence in the 1960s, 1970s, that period, the Latin American countries have been independent for a long, long time and have faced pretty much the same problems that the more modern colonial, post-colonial societies face, which again is indicative that there's something about the structure of colonial activity, the structure of these colonies that is indicating why we're not seeing development, why we're seeing poor institutions, poor governance developing in these places. And so, just to give you some perspective on that, because again, it's quite interesting. The U.S. was independent, fully independent of Britain, of the English Empire in 1776. I guess finally 1789. Venezuela was independent in 1821, so not that far off of that. Colombia, Panama, Ecuador, all those countries were independent about the same time. So we're talking hundreds of years that these countries have been independent. It's not 2 years, it's not 50 years, it's hundreds of years. And on the one hand, we've got the US, which was independent around the same time, with one of the highest per capita GDPs for any large nation. But lots of other large nations with relatively low per capita GDP levels and relatively low human development levels as compared to a lot of wealthier countries. So this has been a great confusion, a great history that people have been exploring and concerned about for quite some time. But to give you a sense of the difference in the quality of institutions, the difference in the quality of governance, I point this out. The US has had about 46 presidents. Venezuela has had about 46 heads of state / presidents. But of those 46, 47 that Venezuela has had, you've had 12 that have been straight military dictatorships. And Venezuela was only really democratic in the 1940s, period 1930s, 1940s, despite having gotten independence in 1821, when the US was itself democratic at the time. So from 1821 all the way to 1930, that's over 100 years, Venezuela was not democratic in any way and had a lot of presidents, a lot of turnover in that regard. And in the midst of that, you had 12 military presidents. So I think that perhaps is an indicator of instability if you have military dictatorships that have taken over a country. You know, the military dictatorships have been in the US since 1776. There's been zero, folks, zero military dictatorships in the US from then to now. An interesting indicator of governance. Isn't that an interesting indicator of governance? Around about the same period of time, zero military dictatorships versus a minimum of 12. And that's just the most sympathetic estimate. Of course, if you're looking at every group before the replication back in 1930s, 1940s, you'd be looking at far more presidents, far more leaders that would not have been functioning under a democratic system for that period of time. And so this is kind of been a legacy throughout Latin America, whereas you had very stable governments in places like the US, Australia, Canada, and so on. You have very unstable governments in Latin America. And you've had very unstable governments in many parts of Africa and so on. But you've had unstable governments in Latin America for a long time. And that, to me, is the point that's perhaps lost on us when you look at colonial legacies, is it's not just about instability that you see now, it's about the legacy of instability and how that has affected growth over time. And so the argument that these economists make is that this prolonged period of instability, this prolonged period of governance that isn't with the strongest safeguards, many of which are found in democracy. Of course, democracy has its criticisms, but there are many safeguards, has resulted in a reduction in the growth of these types of countries. We see it in the post-colonial world, English post-colonial world from the 1960s and onward, but it's an effect that's been there since the 1800s, coming all the way forward. And we know this because in countries where there was low deaths from malaria, where the settlers, colonial settlers, decided to stay for prolonged periods of time, the countries developed very well. And in countries where the colonial settlers decided they weren't going to stay for a prolonged period of time, you had all of this instability. What that means is that the structures set up in one circumstance are long-term structures that are rigorous and that provide for good governance, and structures set up in another part of the world are just to extract resources, No one's hanging around. It's just about resource extraction. And unfortunately, that's often been the legacy of a lot of third world countries. So as a result of that, you've got kind of a base of poor governance. And the argument is that a lot of these poor governance cultures, a lot of these poor governance structures have just carried on as colonial powers left through the local populations. Of course, if in 1820 the Spanish or the Portuguese and so on have left Latin America, and Latin America is still suffering from poor governance outcomes, that means that the local aristocracies, the local groups that were in control, carried on many of the same poor governance practices. And so it is kind of an effect of where you started off, leading you to an eventual outcome that was not the best. There have been good times, such as when Venezuela was doing quite well, and Argentina was doing quite well. There have been some good times. However, there have also been very substantial poor periods. Currently, of course, Venezuela is going through a very substantially poor period. And I point again to the example of the US, which has not had any military dictatorships. The big advantage is that when something goes wrong, they can kind of fix it very quickly through a robust democratic process. Whereas in Venezuela, the process has been very difficult for them to turn the country around and to sort out the democratic process. So as a result, poor policies or policies that may be difficult for the population have been able to run for several years, and the country is not able to adapt. So that's kind of the perspective that actually sitting down and studying large numbers of countries over hundreds of years kind of gives you. And somehow, surprise, surprise, it's all tied back to malaria and to whether or not settlers could comfortably live in a particular country. So what does this mean for us here in Guyana? What does it mean for us? Well, what it means is that as a country where we have a high prevalence of malaria, where we haven't had those types of institutions built out to make the country robust for a prolonged period of time, and we've had to kind of develop our own institutions and try to go through this process, we are subject to a lot of risks that the study points out. We're subject to the reduction in growth that the study points out. And that now manifests itself in poor development projects, poor national projects, where rather than us getting the full benefit of the project, you actually get very serious losses. And so what I can actually show you is the difference in the growth of the country because of poor governance and over a period of time how that impacts the direction of the country. So we've talked big picture about the theory, we've talked big picture about countries that have had difficulties. But now we can talk about specific projects and tie them in to show that it is a process of poor governance that leads us to not being able to make progress. I sometimes make the joke that unfortunately in Georgetown, when you look at old pictures of Georgetown right after independence, you look at it. Now the only thing that seems to change is that QC's auditorium going down was rebuilt in a different shape. Because the city looks pretty similar to how it looked right after independence. Of course, you've had some buildings put up, but it's not different enough that I think you couldn't figure your way around the town if you hadn't come back since independence, which to me is pretty problematic. So anyway, that gives you some perspective on it. Let's talk about skeleton itself. Let's actually talk about skeleton, and that's a project that was supposed to be the savior of the sugar industry. Some individuals said that was skeleton, the sugar industry is dead. And that is a 200 million US project that never worked out the way that it should work out. Never worked out. We've had Mr. Bulsaran, a former Auditor General, come out and say a lot of these types of projects, you didn't get any benefit. He's told them huge sums. We'll run you through a quick few of them. But we want to establish the principle. What does skeleton, being a failure, actually costed the Guyanese economy over time? What has been the negative of this? And skeleton, which we'll talk about 40 billion dollars. If all of that was lost, if that money could instead be invested in a road system, let's say in the mining areas, that would have helped to lower the cost of fuel, improve production. There's generally a principle that in these types of infrastructure works and so on, like roads, you'll see between 50 and 45% return, so benefit to the country. See between 50 and 45%, because Guyana has many productive areas. I would imagine that will be on the higher end, so 45% is much more realistic. We've got lots of natural resources. If we build roads, we would be able to make use of these natural resources. So close to the 45% I think is reasonable for Guyana. What that means is that original 40 billion Guyana dollar loss that skeleton was actually is more like a 58 billion Guyana dollar loss. And let's say a road lasts about 25 years. That's some estimates for roads may have to last a bit longer, but let's say 25 years. That's $2.32 billion loss every single year. We should have been growing like $2.32 billion more every single year. In terms of the actual growth of the country, we're growing at, I think 2010 at the time that we commissioned skeleton, we're growing at 3.8%. That would have put us up to 3.96%. So we would have been closer to 4%. But, folks, and this is the kicker of it, this is every year. So these losses, this reduction in the growth of the country, is over a 25-year period. And so projects like skeleton, which are big failures, actually result in huge long-term losses. And you may say to yourself, well, skeleton is just one project, haven't had a lot like that. But we're going to go through this, just a few images and just point out some projects to you guys. So let's get the next slide up there. I think the first slide is skeleton. So that's the skeleton factory. So we're talking about a $58 billion loss versus if we had built a road network. Let's get the next slide up. Let's see the next image. All right, so we got Amalia Falls. That's one we're going to come back to. Let's get the next image. We've got the Chiljagan International Airport. It's been pointed out that the works there. There's some questions around the works there. Let's get the next slide up.
We've got the fiber optic program, the fiber optic project, which never manifested. So that's another few $1 billion here and there. Let's get the next one up. We've got the one laptop per child project, where there were serious allegations around it. Something that again needs to be properly investigated. And let's think about it one more. Let's see what's the next slide. All right, let's hold on. So what we've essentially got is a series of projects. Some we've gotten some benefit from, others we've not gotten much benefit from. Where there's a question as to whether this money was not spent as efficiently as it could have been spent. That's the real question. This money spent as efficiently as it could be spent. What Mr. Guzman is saying is that he doesn't think that it was spent in that way at all, because he didn't see anything really come out of many of these projects. So what you see wasn't really the level of value that you might have anticipated. Of course, I don't particularly agree with everything that he says. I think some areas you got value, other areas you didn't get as much value. But my core point is this, audience. My core point is this. Every time you have a national development project which does not meet the standards that it should, does not perform in the way that it should, that's a cost to the long-term future of the country. That's a cost every year to the growth of the country. And so these things add up. And actually, if you have, in the course of the lifetime of a country, 10, 15 of these skeletons, which we might with the oil and gas project, the oil and gas economy taking in full gear, you're going to see a very significant difference in direction of the country. And you may say, oh, that's all the past. What's that got to do with what's going on now? There's so much progress being made. But I'll point something out. On a previous show, I actually used the government's own numbers for a solar project, a different solar project, versus a Niagara Falls, to show you viewers that at a bare minimum, the government is wasting about 200 million US. 200 million US. But that's at a bare minimum. We're going to delve into Amalia some more in another show. But what I'm getting at is, I just pointed out to you the huge costs of skeleton tree growth in the economy. And we're about to do another skeleton right after, right this minute. We're about to do another skeleton. So we should again anticipate a huge cost to the economy over a period of time. That's the concern. That's the concern. And as we see a lot of these infrastructure projects that the government is putting forward, the costs will balloon and go up and go up. You can actually sit down and estimate the way that the economy is being held back by these types of projects. Now, there is a flip side to this. There's another angle to this that we just want to give you viewers a sense of as we kind of close off this section of things. And that is that money that is spent on these projects could be spent on infrastructure, yes, but it could also be spent to raise wages and salaries or to deal with cost of living effects and so on and so forth. We've seen in the last budget 4 times more spent on capital, things like infrastructure, than on cost of living expenses. 4 times more. That is a very, very, very big difference. 4 times more. And we'll show you again the seriousness of this. And the reason that things are so tight again, things are tight and things are so difficult, is that the money is being spent otherwise. We've seen that when it's spent otherwise, not spent well, it's making losses. And as a result, you, the average person, are not able to benefit in the way that you should be able to benefit. So on a big, grand scale, you look at the growth of the country being pulled back by poor management. But in terms of your pocket, you are actually worse off because of this poor management. And let's go to the next slide. Let's talk a bit about the increases in cost of living that we've got in this country. Let's give you a sense of that. Those are the prices for vegetable oil and cooking oil, as well as for grains and cereals. So those are the prices for edibles, for things that people need to eat. This is, during 2021 or 2022 period. Those are skyscrapers deals. That's straight up both of those things. People have been complaining bitterly about the cost. And yet, we're seeing a small fraction of the government budget spent on dealing with cost of living, and the vast majority spent on capital and infrastructure. Let's get the next slide up. Let's get another sense of the things are tight. We're seeing the prices again. That's something that's going up through the roof. Let's get the next slide there. We're seeing now the cost of wheat. This is due to the Ukraine war. It's going straight up. So that is another skyscraper there. And then let's get the next slide, which is the killer idea. Now, viewers, here is the national budget for 2022. That little tiny minuscule slice at the top, can't even see it. That is the amount that's been put towards cost of living. So I'm showing you here some skyscrapers, some high prices, in some cases the highest prices on record for these food items that people need every day. And in the national budget, less than 1%, not even a percent, a sliver so thin you can barely see it. That's what's being put towards helping people deal with these unbelievable circumstances. But instead, we're putting 4 to 4 times more towards capital and infrastructure and those types of things. We've shown you, viewers, loss to the economy, the broad loss to the economy of poor capital projects, of poor projects. But now we're showing you on a kitchen table, in visual, small scale level, the cost of living in Guyana are through the roof, skyscrapers. And the money, rather than coming to the citizens to help them, much of it is going towards the same types of projects. Many of them have been failing in the past. This explains in many ways why things are tight in Guyana right now, why it feels so bad, why someone was saying, the things is not nice at all. I said, this explains it. So it's not an accident, it's not just the global pandemic. That's not correct. It's poor governance. It's a legacy of poor governance. And talk about skeleton, but I'm talking about Amalia as well. So the past as well as the future. There's been no change in the quality of governance. And that's why things are tight. We're going to wrap up this section. We've got a guest actually here. She's excited to come on. Ms. Shalika Shukanian. We're going to bring her on. We're going to have a nice chat. We like to get to know various members of the PNCR every show and give viewers a chance to get to know them. So we could bring on Ms. Shalika, how are you? How are you tonight?
I am good. Thank you for having me.
Good to have you on. Good to have you on. So, as I mentioned, we like to keep it light, so I'm going to ask you some unusual, but hopefully quite fun and funny questions. But we're going to start off, if you could give viewers a quick introduction, maybe where you're from, your current job capacity, maybe your qualifications, anything that you'd like to bring up. Just give us a quick introduction.
Well, I originate from the village of Pleasant. That's where my family is from. But I was actually, when I was born, we were living in BV. So I've pretty much traversed the East Coast between Pleasant, BV, and Earlsport, LBI. I am a wife, a mother of 3 children. What
I didn't know that you had 3 children.
Yes, I do. I have three children. One, the eldest being, well, she'll be 14 in a few. What else do I say about myself? I don't, I'm not accustomed talking too much about myself. But outside of that, I work at the People's National Congress Reform. I am the public relations officer in our political party. I'm a major in international relations. I studied international relations. I have a bachelor's degree in social science. Yes.
That all sounds great. Absolutely. I understand that you have a show facing the nation, which interviews, as I am interviewing, various parties. That was maybe a slightly different angle.
Yeah.
But that's another interesting one. You want to give yours a sense of when that comes on?
Okay.
The show as well.
So Facing the Nation is a show that showcases the work of the party, all the MPs, the leader of the party, and any kind of work we're doing. And it's also a show where we get a sense of what's happening. It's also a calling program, so we get to talk to citizens if they have any questions, any concerns. So we interview persons within the party, and we also take feedback from the public on that show, and that is on Channel 6 every Friday from 12:30 to 1:30.
Okay, great. Good to hear about that. So I got a fun question. What is the easiest thing about interviewing party leaders? What's the easiest thing? The thing that's the most fun, the thing that causes you the least headache? I'm sure that there's all sorts of challenges in interviewing party leaders. What is the easiest thing, or the thing perhaps that you like the most about interviewing party leaders? What's something that comes to mind?
I really don't know what comes other than for me, interviewing our party comrades. It's kind of easy for me because I love politics. So
Sure.
it's usually a great interaction to
Yeah.
get from them a sense of, how they feel on issues and how they can interact with people. So that's what I actually like about doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. It must be very interesting people that you're interviewing. So that's
Of
definitely
course.
going to be something of notes. All right, let's switch tack altogether. What is your least favorite food? Least favorite food.
This is going to come as a shock. It usually is to most people. I do not like cook-up.
Whoa, shots fired on here. What is that? Okay. Well,
Yes, my
thank you
least
for your
favorite food.
honesty. I'm sure the comments are exploding. People are like, what?
Yeah, like I get that all the time.
Okay. Well, we've had some interesting answers on this show to this question so far. So the trend continues. Okay, good. I think that's very much understandable. I think someone said Correga, but that's very within that answer. I think pretty much many people say Correga. Well, Coco. Okay.
Yeah, cook-up.
Interesting. Is it anything particular about Coco, or just in general?
I don't know what it is. I maybe it's the peas. I'm not a big fan of peas. I don't know,
Sure.
but
Very
maybe that's it.
Sure. That's pretty cool. That's pretty funny. What movie or TV show have you rewatched the most? Now you can't say Home Alone, right? That would be cheating. You can't say Home Alone. I think everyone in Guyana has probably seen Home Alone. So you can't say
It's way more than 20 times.
Yeah. So what is a TV show or a movie that you feel like you may have rewatched the most, or that you, I guess, particularly enjoyed?
The truth is, I don't watch a lot of TV outside of news and that kind of stuff.
Sure.
So probably for TV series or shows, something like Blacklist. It was my big hit.
Yeah,
I absolutely love Blacklist.
Yeah. Okay. I think I heard of an interview with a big fan, but I gotta track that.
Yeah,
down and bring that on. Okay.
It's a really nice TV show.
Sure.
It gives you a wide perspective on what are the inner workings, not just in politics, but the networking of the world. That's the way I see it.
Sure. I used to find I guess House of Cards was a bit similar. It's a pretty famous show, but what I found to be hilarious about that is that it actually was on while Trump was in office, and he was doing things that were so much more absurd than the things happening in the show. The show felt boring.
Watching the news was better then.
It was much more dramatic than the show, which was crazy.
Yeah.
Disturbing. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But crazy. Yeah. Okay. What is your least favorite vacation? Vacation or time off from work that is your least favorite. Maybe it was an unpleasant trip. Trip was extremely long. It rained the entire time that we were on that beautiful island. What's your least favorite vacation?
The truth is, with the jobs that I
That
We
is,
were
I agree.
very scared.
Very troubling. Wow, yeah, that for those of us who travel along the trail and so on, I don't think I can run into the jaguars and so on, but yeah, majestic but terrifying.
And right in Guyana.
Right here in Guyana.
Yeah.
Right here in good old Guyana.
Yeah.
Yeah. Here's another unusual one. We've gotten unusual answers to this as well. What is your favorite smell? What's something that you smell it and it reminds you of the best day of your life, reminds you of your mother, something that makes you very happy, or something maybe that brings up a good memory for you. We actually we had someone previously who mentioned that they were very much into colognes and perfumes and scent oil, which I was quite surprised by. Do you have a favorite smell? I know that right now in Guyana, apparently, survived when you already did cologne around there. I don't know.
I don't have like any preferences with smells, but in my view, probably perfumes and that kind of thing are more pleasant to smell. But if I have a preference, not necessarily so. But I use a lot of like more Brazilian types of perfumes. I find them very soft to your sense, and they last very long.
Yeah,
So I kind of like those.
Well, I learned something again here. I never heard that. That's really interesting.
We have a lot of them selling here too,
Yeah.
because we have a lot of Brazilians here.
Yeah, I mean, big population, I'm sure it's growing. Okay, wow, interesting. Yeah, this is an unusual question. Maybe I'll treat this one with future shows. It's produced interesting answers thus far. All right, and now it's a kind of swing around and you kind of give us a sense of something that might have been on your mind. But we like to ask, what is your biggest hope for the future of Guyana? Something that maybe is a problem that you hope that can be resolved, or something is maybe an opportunity that you think Guyana is not yet seized or that we really should seize. What's your biggest hope, or something that you're really looking forward to in the future of our country? Of course, we were in a time of great opportunity and great change. So, do you have anything that comes to mind as something that you think is important for the country as we grow? I know some people have mentioned they'd like to see the divide around race removed. Other people have mentioned they'd like to see the education system produce the way that we'd like it to produce when we give it the right resources. I don't know if there's been anything that's been on your mind, the way that some of these things have been on some of our viewers and yes, mine.
I think a major thing for me, and I think the thing that actually brought me into even thinking along political lines. I actually went to Sacred Heart as a child, and during that period, there was a lot of unrest, there were lots of protests, and being on Main Street where everything basically happened during that time, 1997, 1998, 1999, it was always something that bothered me. I wanted to know and understand why it was that persons had to take to the extent that they did on the streets, and also to understand why police officers and officials would have thought it best to treat citizens the way that they did. So for me, getting into politics, what it really is for me is to see that there is this level of injustice that we see in our country to be decreased, and the issue of our races, and that Guyanese can see each other as Guyanese. We have to learn, for me, one of the most important things in the future is that Guyanese have to understand that we have to appreciate each other's differences. Nothing is wrong with appreciating an East Indian culture, an African culture, Amerindian culture, a Chinese culture. It really is the thing that makes us Guyanese. And when I hear debates in school about them having different days to different people, and some people are upset, oh, we should be Guyanese. I like to say, even in our PTA meetings, I say the thing that makes us Guyanese is all these races. We wouldn't be Guyanese if we didn't have all these 6 races that are part of our country. So it is my hope to help work towards ensuring that we appreciate those cultures and that the injustices that are faced because of sections and because of race and because of all these different mechanisms, that we are able to correct it as a people, as politicians who are become responsible and understand the resources are to be shared among each other. And if that is done, if the politicians and the persons managing the resources are able to do that, automatically you will get that blend, and we can truly speak to our motto: one people, one nation, one destiny.
Well, thank you. That's very inspiring, uplifting, and I think points you in the direction that of progress, and that's really what we all want in this country. One or another, we want to see that progress that we've been fighting for, that has, however, eluded us very much. So thank you very much for coming on, Shanika.
Thank you for having me again.
Learn a bit about Brazilian clothes and different smells. So there you go.
Get you
I
one.
it as well. Thank you very much. And we'll look forward to seeing you in the future, and look forward to your program on I believe it's Fridays.
Fridays on Channel 6 between 12:30 to 1:30.
There we go. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so that was Ms. Shanika Hins, the PR officer for the PNCR. Always good to catch up, always good to hear a number of jobs that we anticipate. So we anticipate quite a substantial increase in jobs, but where are these jobs actually even going to be? So first off, as we mentioned in the previous show, we anticipate as much as 150,000 jobs being created directly and indirectly through the oil and gas sector, with Exxon perhaps having as many as 30,000 employees if they continue on their current trajectory as the production expands and the FPSOs, the floating production vessels, come on board. So we'll expect to see a lot more jobs created, and as we mentioned, you're also going to see jobs at shore bases, maybe a couple of refineries, machine shops, and so on that will serve the oil and gas sector. And so we're going to see probably at peak production as much as 150,000 jobs. So quite a substantial number of jobs. Of course, Guyana has a small population, but we want to ensure that everyone has access to these opportunities. Now, that begs the question, where are these jobs actually going to be physically located? Are they all going to be in Georgetown? Are we going to see some in Belize, Linden, and Esquivel? How is this going to work? Well, the first thing I'd say is the shore bases. We've covered before the location of the 3 shore bases, where there's as many as 8 that are going to be in the Demerara River, perhaps 9 now that the Exxon shore base is coming on. But we're seeing as many as 8, or we expect as many as 8 shore bases in the Demerara River. We anticipate at least 1 in Esquivel, another 1 or 2 in Belize. So there's definitely going to be a significant presence. And so one area we're going to see a lot of jobs is in that Demerara River channel. You're going to see thousands of jobs along the Demerara River channel. That's on either side, so West Bank or East Bank. You're going to see lots of jobs generated there. We're also going to see some potentially some small oil refineries with a few hundred jobs. 2 places that have been considered thus far are Berbice and Linden. So you should keep an eye out if you're living in Berbice or Linden regarding oil refineries being developed in that area. I think there's as many as 6 applications for an oil refinery in Berbice. So that's something definitely to keep in mind.
Exxon is signed a contract recently for a shore base in Baton Rouge. So there's obviously going to be lots of jobs created there. But also in Georgetown and on the East Coast, where Exxon will have its headquarters and currently has its headquarters, you're going to see a lot of jobs in this area. This, of course, we've seen in the housing market. Actually, seen that reflected in the price of housing in Georgetown, which has gone through the roof. With the PSC price circulation saying that from 2019 to now, housing prices have as much as tripled. A really substantial increase in the cost of living. But that's because a lot of jobs are being created around the Georgetown area. That's going to be another area. The other thing to keep in mind, though, is that there will be a lot of secondary service jobs created that will be on the back of these types of jobs. So, as an example, in the shore bases, people at shore bases have to eat. So, we expect that a lot of jobs will be created around the shore bases where it's not direct employment, but indirect employment. Whether it's in the construction of houses, whether it's in the provision of food, whether it's in the provision of other types of services to those same shore-based workers. We're going to see a lot of that. In Georgetown, the same effect, and same thing in the other parts of the country, we see a lot of refineries and so on and so forth. Additionally, you might see some machine shops. I believe that there's one, I can't remember one that is going up at Enmore. You're going to see a machine shop to service the, you're going to see a machine shop there, but I don't know the areas as well. About the location. But essentially, you're going to see various service locations that are going to do technical work such as welding and machining to support you on this. So you should keep an eye out for those types of facilities being developed, because what it will mean is that similarly, those areas are going to require various types of activity in order to facilitate, again, provision of things like food and housing and so on. So, at various different spots around the country, we're going to see these jobs generated. Really, it's kind of thinking about how you can benefit from this locations, if it's going to be near to you, if it's something that's accessible, whether you'd like to live near or you'd like to live within a certain period of time from in terms of travel time for one of these job opportunities. And as a result of that, you hopefully will be able to benefit whether you want to pursue a job or something else. So that's essentially what we should anticipate in terms of how these things should play out, how the job situation should play out, where the jobs are going to be. And hopefully that's been helpful to you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us this Saturday night. We're starting your Saturday night on a high with Elson Low. We really appreciate having you here. And we hope that you've had fun and learned a bit. We've covered some interesting topics, and we'll continue to build on these topics each time we have a show. So thank you very much, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you for watching our program. See you right back here, same place, same time. And remember, hold the line of battle, comrades. Our victory is sure.